Sometimes life gives us a second chance when we least expect it, like the night a single dad met his first love after decades apart. You won't want to miss how this story unfolds. Drop a comment with your favorite part and hit that subscribe button to join us for more heartwarming journeys. The school gym hummed with voices, a low buzz of parents dressed in polished suits and dresses, their conversations blending into the steady echo of footsteps on the polished wood floor. Ethan Walker tugged at the knot of his tie, wishing he'd had time to iron the shirt he'd worn 100 times before. 8 years of single fatherhood had taught him to juggle exhaustion with pride, but tonight, after rushing straight from the construction site and barely splashing water on his face, he felt every bit of the imbalance. His boots still carried the dust of the day, and as he glanced around at the crisp jackets and clean shoes of other parents, he felt more out of place than ever. Beside him, Mia tugged his hand eagerly, her face lit with excitement that erased the heaviness of his day. "Dad, Miss Bennett said she really wants to meet you," she whispered, almost bouncing on her toes. "She's the coolest teacher ever, and she told the class my science project was the best." Ethan smiled, warmth flooding his tired chest. In her shining eyes, he saw every reason he kept moving forward. "Lead the way, kiddo," he said softly, and followed her through the clusters of parents who seemed so perfectly put together. Mia pointed across the room toward a woman whose back was turned. She wore a navy blazer, her posture composed, shoulders straight, her head tilted in a way that showed she was listening carefully to another parent. Something about that simple tilt, that quiet grace, stirred a memory Ethan hadn't touched in years. And then came a laugh, clear, warm, familiar, and it hit him like a hammer to the chest. He knew that laugh. The woman turned, and the world seemed to tilt. Lauren Bennett. Time collapsed in a heartbeat. For Ethan, it was no longer the crowded gym of Heartbreak Elementary. It was summer, 20 years ago. A night sky above them, promises whispered that neither had kept. He stood frozen, his breath caught somewhere between disbelief and a memory too sharp to deny. Lauren's professional smile faltered, her eyes widening as they locked with his. For a second, she looked as stunned as he felt. Then her expression smoothed with the kind of practiced composure that hadn't existed when he last knew her. "Mr. Walker," she said, her voice gentle, almost tentative, though loud enough to carry above the murmur of the room. "It's wonderful to finally meet you. Mia is one of my brightest students." Ethan took her hand when she extended it, the gesture polite, almost absurd in the face of what they once were. Her touch was warm, achingly familiar, and yet so far removed from the girl he remembered. He swallowed hard. "She talks about your class all the time," he managed, his voice lower than he intended. The silence between them stretched, charged, until Mia broke it with innocent curiosity. "You guys know each other?" she asked, her brows lifting. Lauren's answer was quick, her tone carefully neutral. "We went to high school together." Ethan forced a nod, though inside he was reeling. He had come tonight expecting nothing more than a report on his daughter's progress. Instead, he had stumbled into a chapter of his past he thought was long closed. And in that moment, standing in the middle of a buzzing school gym, he knew nothing about his life would ever feel quite the same again. Lauren's hand slipped gently from Ethan's, her posture straightening as if she were reminding herself of the role she now occupied. Her voice carried the calm assurance of a teacher who knew her place in front of parents. "Mia is an extraordinary student," she said, glancing toward the little girl who was now beaming with pride. "Her project showed real creativity and critical thinking. She's not only bright, she's compassionate, always the first to help a classmate who's struggling." Ethan felt his chest swell, a mixture of pride and something more complicated that pressed against the edges of his composure. He had known Mia was special, of course he had, but hearing it spoken aloud in that familiar voice brought back a flood of emotions he wasn't prepared for. He nodded slowly, swallowing against the tightness in his throat. "She gets that from her mom," he almost said, but stopped himself. The truth was Mia's compassion, her grit, her resilience came from the long years the two of them had weathered together. And now, standing here, Lauren was seeing that in Mia too. Lauren's eyes lingered on him for a moment longer than necessary before she shifted them back to Mia. "Why don't you show your father where your project is displayed?" she suggested, her tone kind but edged with a professionalism that told Ethan she was deliberately building a wall. I need to finish speaking with a few more parents, but perhaps, she hesitated, the faintest flicker of something crossing her face. Perhaps we could catch up later. Ethan nodded again, too quickly, as though the movement itself would anchor him. Sure, that sounds fine. But inside, his heart was pounding in a way it hadn't in years. As Mia tugged him toward the corner of the gym, where colorful trifold boards stood proudly on display, Ethan allowed himself a glance back. Lauren was already speaking to another couple, her smile polished, her gestures precise. Yet for the briefest instant, when she turned slightly, her eyes sought his again, and there it was, the trace of the girl he once knew, hidden beneath layers of time and circumstance. He remembered late summer evenings at 18, the warmth of her hand in his, promises whispered under skies freckled with stars. He remembered the way she laughed without restraint, how her eyes lit with fire when she talked about the future, how she swore distance would never break them. And he remembered, too, the silence that followed when she stopped answering his calls. Mia's voice cut through his reverie. "Dad, look! They put my volcano right next to the entrance." She pointed proudly to her project, a careful display of plaster and paint, labels written in her tidy handwriting. Ethan crouched beside her, forcing himself back into the present. "Kiddo, this is incredible," he murmured, brushing a hand over her hair. "You did all this on your own?" "Well, Miss Bennett gave me some tips," Mia admitted with a grin. "She says, science is about asking the right questions." Ethan's lips curved, though his mind was still elsewhere. Science, questions, answers, things he usually understood. But nothing could explain the rush of memory and emotion that came from one unexpected reunion. He stood again, his eyes drifting back across the gym, catching sight of Lauren as she tilted her head to listen to another parent. That same tilt, that same patience he had once adored. The night stretched on with polite conversations, displays of student work, and the rhythm of parents filtering in and out. Yet beneath it all was an undercurrent Ethan could not shake, the awareness that Lauren Bennett was no longer just a figure from his past. She was here, part of Mia's world. And whether he liked it or not, that meant she was part of his world too. As the crowd began to thin and the hum of voices softened, Ethan caught her eye once more. This time, her smile was quieter, almost tentative, and she gave the smallest nod as if to say yes later. He exhaled slowly, realizing that however carefully she kept her distance, something unspoken still remained between them, something neither of them had managed to leave behind. Saturday morning came with a crisp bite in the Portland air, the kind of autumn chill that carried both nostalgia and possibility. Ethan dropped Mia at her weekend art class, kissed the top of her head, and promised to be back before she even finished her painting. His heart beat faster than he cared to admit as he drove across town to the small cafe Lauren had chosen. She was already there when he arrived, sitting near the wide front window where sunlight spilled across her table. She wore a cream sweater and jeans, her dark hair falling loosely over her shoulders, softer than the professional poise she carried in the classroom. For a moment, Ethan simply stood in the doorway, remembering the girl who used to fall asleep on his shoulder during late-night study sessions. Then he forced himself forward, every step bringing him closer to a past he thought he'd buried. "Sorry I'm late," he said as he slid into the chair across from her. "Mia's class is all the way across town." Lauren smiled, her fingers curled around a mug. "Don't worry, I just got here myself." He ordered a black coffee, the cheapest thing on the menu, and sat down, unsure of where to begin. But almost at once, they both spoke. "So," and then stopped, laughing at the awkward timing. The laughter was small, but it broke the tension, carrying them back for just a moment to the easy rhythm they once had. "You first," Ethan offered. Lauren hesitated, then wrapped both hands around her cup as though it anchored her. "I owe you an explanation," she began, her voice quieter now, "about how things ended between us." She paused, meeting his eyes. "I was young, Ethan. I was scared. My parents had just divorced. My father was pushing me to think about my career, about connections that would help me get ahead. He introduced me to someone, a businessman's son, and I let myself believe it was the smarter path. Instead of being honest with you, I disappeared. And by the time I realized how wrong I'd been, months had passed. I thought you'd moved on." Ethan listened, the old ache stirring, but not with the sharpness he expected. 2 decades had dulled the pain, leaving behind only a faint scar. He leaned back, his eyes steady on hers. Life happens. We were kids. I can't say it didn't hurt, but we were kids. Her relief flickered across her face, though she still looked regretful. You deserve better than silence, she said softly. He nodded, taking a slow sip of coffee before answering. Maybe, but my life went a different direction too. He hesitated, then let out a breath. I got married not long after college. For a while, things were good. Then Mia was born, and it didn't take long for Melissa to realize she wasn't cut out for motherhood. She left when Mia was 2, haven't seen her since. Lauren's eyes softened with sympathy, her voice gentle. That must have been incredibly hard. It was, Ethan admitted, staring into the dark swirl of his coffee. But Mia and I figured it out. I stepped down from management at the firm so I could work construction hours that gave me more time with her. The money's tighter, sure, but we manage. He looked back up, his voice firmer. She's my world. I wouldn't trade it. Lauren reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of his. She's amazing, Ethan. And that's because of you. For a long moment, neither spoke. The cafe around them buzzed with life, clinking cups, low voices, the hiss of steaming milk. But at their table, the world felt quiet. When Ethan finally broke the silence, his voice carried something he hadn't expected. You know, after all this time, I thought the past was gone. But sitting here with you, I remember why I cared so much. Why losing you hurt the way it did. Lauren's eyes glistened as she whispered, I never stopped wondering about you. And in that fragile, unguarded moment, the weight of 20 years seemed to lift just enough for something else to take its place. Something lighter, something that felt a lot like hope. After that Saturday morning, it became easier, almost natural, for them to see each other again. One coffee turned into two into a quiet routine. Ethan would meet Lauren after her school day ended, Mia tucked into an after-school program nearby, and they would walk slowly through the streets of Portland as the sun dipped low, talking about everything and nothing. Sometimes they laughed like they were teenagers again. Sometimes they sat in thoughtful silence. Two adults carrying the weight of years but finding comfort in simply sharing space. On weekends, Mia often became the unspoken bridge between them. She adored her teacher in a way that felt both innocent and extraordinary. Dad, can Miss Bennett come with us to the park? She asked one Saturday morning, holding her bike helmet with eager hands. Lauren said yes before Ethan could answer. And soon the three of them were strolling along the riverside path, Mia pedaling ahead while Ethan and Lauren trailed behind. Watching them together stirred something inside him, an almost dangerous warmth, as if life was showing him what he hadn't realized he'd been missing. The pattern deepened. Lauren began stopping by their small apartment on weeknights, ostensibly to help Mia with her science projects. She carried herself with the enthusiasm of someone who truly loved teaching, leaning over the kitchen table with her sleeves rolled up, guiding Mia's hands through vinegar volcanoes and solar system models. Her laughter filled the corners of the cramped living room, mixing with Mia's giggles until the space felt brighter than it had in years. Ethan would find himself leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching the two of them like a scene he almost didn't dare believe was real. And then sometimes she stayed, not overnight, never more than a couple of hours, but long enough to share a simple dinner at their battered little table. Mia would chatter away about planets or constellations, Lauren listening with the same intensity she gave her students, and Ethan would sit across from them, quietly amazed at how seamlessly she fit. It was as if their small family of two had stretched without warning into something larger. Yet amid that easy rhythm, Ethan began to notice details he couldn't ignore. The car Lauren drove was sleek and new, its leather interior smelling far too fresh for a teacher's salary. The watch on her wrist was understated but expensive, the kind of accessory you didn't buy on a whim. And when they visited the museum together one weekend, their tickets were upgraded to a private tour without so much as a question. The staff treated her with a respect that felt out of place for a fifth-grade teacher, nodding to her as if she belonged to a different world entirely. Ethan tried not to let it bother him, tried to tell himself that maybe she had savings or family money or connections from her old life before teaching. But the question circled anyway, nagging at the edges of his mind. Why had she really left the corporate track she once dreamed about? Why did she carefully deflect whenever he asked about her life now beyond the classroom? Still, when he looked across the table at night and saw Mia grinning with unguarded joy, as Lauren praised her homework, or when his own laughter came easier than it had in years. He told himself not to ruin it. After all, Lauren had stepped back into their lives, not as some distant figure from the past, but as a woman who seemed to belong right here in their kitchen, sleeves rolled, hands in the soap suds beside his. And yet, as he dried the plates and stole a glance at the gleam of her car keys on the counter, Ethan knew there was more to Lauren Bennett than she was telling. The clues began to pile up in ways Ethan could no longer brush aside. It started with the museum trip. Mia had been buzzing for days, clutching Lauren's handwritten note like it was a golden ticket. Ethan expected the usual, standing in line, weaving through crowded exhibits, keeping Mia close while she darted from one display to the next. Instead, the moment they arrived, a staff member greeted them by name and ushered them past velvet ropes into private halls closed to the public. A board member approached Lauren warmly, shaking her hand with the kind of deference that made Ethan pause. He watched her accept it with practiced ease, her smile polite but knowing, as though this was far from unusual. Later, as Mia pressed her nose to a glass case holding a fragment of meteorite, Ethan leaned toward her. "How did you manage all this?" he asked quietly. Lauren only shrugged, eyes still on Mia. "I used to consult for their education program. They owed me a favor." Her tone was casual, but something about the answer felt rehearsed. Back home, the pattern continued. Mia came bounding into the apartment one evening with a packet in her hand, waving it like treasure. "Dad, Miss Bennett got me a scholarship to the robotics workshop, the one with the real engineers." Ethan's heart sank. He knew the price tag on that program. It was more than a month's rent. He forced a smile for Mia's sake, but when he glanced at Lauren, her reassurance came too quickly. "There's a fund for promising students," she explained. "It's no problem." "No problem." The words echoed long after she left that night, her luxury car disappearing down the street. Ethan sat at the kitchen table long after Mia had gone to bed, staring at the unpaid bills stacked neatly in a folder, wondering how Lauren could move through life so easily when every choice he made had to be measured against a dollar. It wasn't just the car or the museum or the scholarship. It was the subtle things, the way her clothes were always tailored perfectly, understated but fine, the way people seemed to recognize her in public, offering nods of respect, the way she deflected questions about her past with graceful skill. At first, he told himself it didn't matter. She was here now. She was kind to Mia. She made their lives brighter. But the doubts gnawed at him. If he didn't know who she really was, then what was he opening the door to? One night, after Mia had drifted to sleep, Ethan opened his laptop, the glow of the screen the only light in the apartment. He hesitated, guilt curling in his chest, before finally typing her name into the search bar. What he found left him breathless. Article after article lit up the screen. Lauren Bennett, Tech Future Innovations Visionary CEO. Headlines chronicled her meteoric rise, the billions in revenue she'd steered, the reputation she'd built as a leader known for both brilliance and compassion. Then came the more recent pieces, noting her shocking decision 2 years earlier to step down, not retire exactly. She still held the chairmanship, still owned a massive stake in the company. The numbers staggered him. Estimates of her net worth stretched into the tens of millions, 80, some said. Ethan closed the laptop slowly, pressing his hands to his face. Lauren Bennett wasn't just Mia's fifth-grade teacher, the woman he'd once loved, the person who fit so seamlessly at his kitchen table. She was something else entirely, someone who had walked away from a fortune most people couldn't fathom, yet carried it with her still. For the first time since she'd walked back into his life, Ethan wasn't sure if he truly knew her at all. Ethan didn't sleep much after that discovery. Every time he closed his eyes, the headlines returned. Numbers so vast they didn't feel real. Pictures of Lauren at sleek conferences and board meetings, the kind of life that seemed galaxies away from his paycheck-to-paycheck world. By the next evening, the weight of it was too heavy to carry. He sent her a message, short and deliberate. "We need to talk. Come by after Mia's asleep." When Lauren arrived, she looked concerned, as though she already sensed what was coming. She stepped inside his small living room, glancing toward Mia's closed bedroom door before turning back to him. "Is everything okay? Your text sounded serious." Ethan gestured for her to sit, but he remained standing, pacing once before he finally blurted the words. "I know, Lauren. About you, About tech future, about everything you didn't tell me? Her brow furrowed, then her expression softened with recognition. She exhaled slowly, setting her purse down with care. I was going to tell you, she said quietly. I just like being me around you, not Lauren Bennett, former CEO, just Lauren. He shook his head, a bitter edge in his voice. You didn't trust me enough to be honest. It wasn't about trust, she insisted, rising from the couch. She moved closer, her eyes searching his. Ethan, when people know that part of my life, it changes how they look at me. Suddenly, I'm not a person anymore. I'm a bank account or a headline. With you, for the first time in years, I wasn't any of that. I was just the girl you knew. That mattered to me. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration pressing against his chest. Do you hear how that sounds from my side? I've been working overtime to afford Mia's school supplies, trying to keep the lights on. And all this time, you've been what? Playing teacher for some authentic experience, slumming it with us because it made you feel normal? The words were sharper than he intended, but once out, he couldn't pull them back. Lauren flinched as though struck. Her voice trembled, but held firm. Is that really what you think? That I'm here because of pity? That Mia's smile? Or the nights at your kitchen table? Or the way I... She broke off, her throat tight. None of that is fake. He looked away, his jaw clenched. I don't know what to think. The Lauren I knew didn't have $80 million. She didn't hide pieces of herself from me. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't back down. The Lauren you knew was a kid who hadn't yet learned how brutal the world can be. Do you know what it's like, Ethan? To never be sure if someone loves you or for what you can give them, to walk into every relationship wondering what the real motive is. His anger faltered, replaced by something quieter, something he didn't want to admit. She stepped closer still, lowering her voice. I should have told you sooner. I was afraid of losing this, of losing you. But nothing about how I feel for you or for Mia is dishonest. That's the only truth that matters. Her words hung in the air, fragile and trembling. Ethan's heart pounded, torn between the sting of betrayal and the echo of sincerity in her eyes. He wanted to believe her. He wasn't sure he could. And yet, when she whispered the final word, love, he felt the ground shift beneath him again, just as it had in that gym the night they first locked eyes after 20 years apart. For days after their argument, Ethan kept his distance. His replies to Lauren's messages were polite but clipped, just enough to keep the peace without opening the door to more. Mia noticed. Of course, children always do. Why hasn't Miss Bennett been over to help with my project? She asked one evening, her brow furrowed in worry. Ethan forced a smile and told her Lauren was busy, though the hollow feeling in his chest told him that wasn't the whole truth. On the fourth day, his phone rang while he was on a construction site across town. The number flashing on the screen made his heart lurch. Heartbrook Elementary. He answered quickly, dust still clinging to his work gloves. The calm voice of the school nurse filled his ear. Mr. Walker, Mia took a fall during recess. She may have sprained her wrist. She's stable, but we'd like you to come check her out. Maybe take her for an x-ray. The world narrowed to that single sentence. Ethan dropped everything, gave a quick nod to his foreman, and sprinted for his truck. Minutes later, he pushed open the door to the nurse's office, breathless. There was Mia, sitting small on the cot, an ice pack pressed gently against her swollen wrist, and kneeling beside her, speaking in low, soothing tones, was Lauren. Mia's face lit up the moment she saw him. Dad, she cried, trying to be brave through the pain. Miss Bennett stayed with me the whole time. Lauren stood, her smile hesitant, her eyes searching Ethan's. I was on lunch duty when it happened. I hope you don't mind that I stayed. Of course not, Ethan said, his voice rougher than he meant it to be. Gratitude swelled in his chest, so sharp it almost hurt. Thank you. After a quick examination, he decided Mia needed an x-ray. He gathered her things, ready to head to the urgent care clinic, but Lauren followed them into the hallway, her voice quiet so Mia wouldn't hear. Ethan, I have a friend. She's one of the best pediatric orthopedic specialists in the state. No waiting, no referrals. Let me make a call. His pride rose instantly, the instinct to say, we'll manage, on the tip of his tongue. But then he saw Mia's pale face, the way she clutched her arm, her lips pressed tight against the pain. He swallowed hard, pride bending under the weight of love. Okay, he said softly. Thank you. Hours later, they sat in the private office of Dr. Simmons, who showed them the x-rays with patient care. "It's a minor fracture," she explained. "A simple cast will do. 4 weeks, and she'll be good as new." Relief swept through Ethan so strongly he had to sit down. Mia chose a purple cast, her favorite color, while Lauren stood nearby, offering gentle encouragement and holding her uninjured hand through the entire ordeal. She never wavered, steady, attentive, as though Mia were her own. When it was all done, Lauren insisted on driving them home. Ethan was too drained to argue. In the car, with Mia drowsy in the back seat, Lauren broke the silence. "I miss you," she whispered. "Both of you." Ethan turned his face toward the window, watching the streets of Portland blur past, his chest tightening with emotions he had tried to bury. "I miss you too." Later that evening, once Mia was settled on the couch with her favorite blanket and a stack of books within reach, Ethan stepped out onto the balcony. Lauren joined him, standing quietly at his side for a long moment. Neither spoke. Then Ethan finally said, his voice low, "Thank you for today. For her. You didn't have to do all that." Lauren's answer was simple, but it carried a truth that shook him. "I did it because I care, because I love her, and because I love you." The words lingered in the fading light, and Ethan felt something inside him shift, against the bruises of pride and doubt, against the history that threatened to divide them. One undeniable truth remained. When Mia needed her most, Lauren had been there, and that mattered more than anything else. The night after Mia's accident, the apartment felt strangely quiet. She had finally drifted off to sleep on the couch, her purple cast propped up on a pillow, a book slipping from her small fingers. Ethan stood on the narrow balcony, the cool Portland air brushing against his face as the city lights flickered in the distance. His chest was heavy with a mixture of gratitude and unease, the weight of everything unsaid pressing harder with each passing minute. Behind him, the sliding door opened with a soft sound. Lauren stepped out, her sweater pulled tight around her, her expression gentle. For a while, she stood beside him without a word, letting the silence settle. Then she whispered, "She's incredible. The way she handled today, so brave." Ethan nodded, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "She gets that from necessity. She's had to be brave her whole life." His voice cracked slightly before he steadied it. "And I've always tried to make sure she never felt the weight of what we didn't have." Lauren turned to look at him, her gaze searching. "You've done more than that. You've given her love and safety. That's worth more than anything money could buy." The words should have comforted him, but instead they stirred the conflict that had been gnawing at him for weeks. He let out a long breath, finally voicing what he'd kept buried. "I don't know how to do this, Lauren. I don't know how to let you help without feeling like I'm failing. Ever since Melissa left, I've had to prove I could do it alone, that Mia and I didn't need anyone else to get by. Depending on someone, it scares me." Lauren stepped closer, her hand brushing lightly against his arm. "Ethan, it isn't dependence to let someone care for you. It's connection. Love isn't about one person carrying the other. It's walking side by side, each bringing what they can. No one's keeping score. It's not charity. It's partnership." Her words lingered in the cool night air, soft but unyielding. Ethan swallowed hard, his throat tight. "I don't want to be a project for you, some reminder that you can live a simpler life. I can't be kept, Lauren. I need to stand on my own 2 feet." She reached for his hand then, intertwining her fingers with his. Her touch was warm, steady. "I would never want to keep you. I love your independence, your pride, your determination to build something real for Maya. That's who you are, and that's who I fell for again. But love doesn't take away your strength. It multiplies it. We don't lose ourselves in it. We grow." Ethan turned, finally meeting her eyes. They were luminous in the glow of the streetlight, filled with sincerity that stripped away the last of his defenses. His voice broke as he whispered, "I'm falling in love with you too, and it terrifies me." Lauren smiled softly, pressing her forehead to his. "It scares me too. But maybe that's how we know it's real." For a long moment, they stood together, their hands entwined, the hum of the city below blending into the steady rhythm of their breathing. Ethan felt something inside him loosen, a wall he had built years ago beginning to crumble. He realized he wasn't giving up his strength by letting her in. He was finding a new kind of strength in sharing it. When he finally bent to kiss her, it wasn't rushed or desperate. It was gentle, steady, the kind of kiss that promised more than passion. It promised partnership, a new beginning built not on what they had lost, but on what they were ready to build together. The months that followed settled into a rhythm that felt both new and strangely natural, as if life had been waiting for them to fall into step together. Ethan accepted a promotion to site manager, a role that demanded more responsibility, but gave him the pride of providing on his own terms. He came home with sore muscles and calloused hands, but there was a lightness in his step now, a sense of purpose that went beyond the paycheck. Lauren, meanwhile, continued teaching at Heartbreak Elementary, her passion for her students as clear as ever. She still wore her blazer and sensible shoes, but Ethan had learned to see past appearances. He knew the truth about the world she came from, yet he also knew her joy was in those classrooms, helping children like Mia discover their own potential. Together, they learned the delicate balance between self-respect and sharing a life. When Lauren quietly opened a college fund for Mia, Ethan's first instinct was resistance. The old pride surged, whispering that it was too much, that accepting her help meant he wasn't enough. But Lauren framed it differently. This isn't charity, Ethan. It's family. And family invests in each other. He didn't let go of his role. He still tucked away part of every paycheck, determined to show Mia that her father was building her future too. But he also let himself accept Lauren's gift as love, not pity. Their evenings grew full of small, ordinary moments that somehow felt extraordinary. Lauren helping Mia with a school project while Ethan cooked pasta on the stove, movie nights on the couch, all three of them tangled under the same blanket. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, Mia darting ahead between the stalls, her laughter ringing like music. 1 year later, the little family gathered around their dining table for a dinner that carried more weight than anyone realized. Margaret Bennett, Lauren's grandmother, had come to visit, her sharp eyes missing nothing. At 85, she carried herself with the authority of someone who had seen lives bend and twist in ways that never surprised her anymore. Mia fussed over the table settings, adjusting the silverware again and again. "Is she going to say yes, Dad?" she whispered, her voice full of conspiratorial excitement. Ethan's hand brushed against the small velvet box in his pocket, his heart thudding. "I hope so," he murmured. Dinner passed with easy conversation, stories from Margaret's youth, and laughter from Mia as Lauren teased her about her bike rides. But as dessert plates were cleared, Ethan felt the weight of the moment press against him. He rose from his chair, his hands trembling slightly, and walked to Lauren's side. The room quieted. Margaret's eyes narrowed knowingly, and Mia clasped her hands beneath her chin. Ethan took a steady breath and reached for Lauren's hand. "When we were 18, I thought I knew what love was," he began, his voice carrying the steadiness of a man who had weathered storms. "But I was wrong. What I feel for you now, after all we've lived, after all we've found again, that is real love." Lauren's eyes widened, tears already glistening as he lowered himself to one knee. The velvet box opened, revealing a simple, elegant ring he had saved for months to buy. "I can't promise you millions, Lauren, but I can promise you my heart, my loyalty, and my choice every single day to love you. Will you marry me?" For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by Lauren's quiet sob as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, then stronger. "Absolutely, yes." Mia squealed, throwing her arms around them both, while Margaret dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, her voice carrying the wisdom of years. "I told you, Lauren, he was always the right one." And in that crowded little dining room beneath the glow of a single light, Ethan realized he had found what he thought he'd lost forever. Not just love, but a home. The wedding came months later, not in some grand cathedral or sweeping ballroom, but in the backyard of the home they had chosen together. Ethan had built the wooden arch himself, every nail driven with quiet pride, and Lauren decorated it with wildflowers Mia had picked from a nearby field. Friends and family gathered in folding chairs beneath the open sky, and Margaret Bennett sat proudly in the front row, her smile carrying both relief and triumph. Mia walked down the aisle first, serving as Lauren's maid of honor, her purple cast long gone, but her joy every bit as bold. She carried a small bouquet and looked back at her father with a grin that steadied his nerves. And then came Lauren, in a simple ivory dress that swayed with the breeze, her eyes never leaving his. Ethan felt his throat tighten, not with fear, but with the overwhelming certainty that every wrong turn, every heartache had been leading him here. The vows were spoken in voices that trembled with honesty. No promises of perfection, only promises of choosing each other through the imperfect. "I don't have millions to give you," Ethan said, his voice breaking, "but I have my heart, my loyalty, and my promise to love you every day." Lauren's answer was clear, her tears falling freely. "And I promise to walk beside you, to honor your strength and share mine, to love you not for what you can give, but for who you are." When they kissed, Mia clapped so loudly the guests laughed through their own tears, and Margaret whispered to the woman beside her, "That's the love I always knew she deserved." Life after the wedding was not a fairy tale, not in the storybook sense. It was better. It was real. Years later, they welcomed a baby boy named James, whose tiny cries filled the house with a new kind of music. Ethan would cradle him in strong, careful arms, while Mia hovered close, eager to help. Lauren, watching them together, often said that her heart felt fuller than she ever thought possible. Evenings in Portland grew rich with simple rituals. Dinner around the table, laughter spilling from the kitchen, school papers spread across the counter, while Lauren guided Mia through homework. Later, when both children were finally tucked into bed, Ethan and Lauren would step out onto the porch, the swing creaking softly beneath their weight. The night air smelled of pine and possibility, and the stars glittered above them like reminders of promises once made under a younger sky. On those nights, Ethan often found himself marveling. "Funny, isn't it?" he would murmur, his arm around her shoulders. "All of this started at a parent-teacher night just one evening, and here we are." Lauren would smile, resting her head against his chest. "It wasn't just one evening, Ethan. It was a second chance, and second chances are rare. We don't waste them." He would press a kiss to her temple, his heart quiet but steady, because he knew she was right. The most beautiful things in life weren't planned, weren't polished. They came from love that had survived disappointment, from faith that had endured silence, from two people brave enough to believe that even after 20 years, they could find their way back. And as the porch light cast its glow around them, with their children asleep inside and the world hushed beyond, Ethan realized he wasn't just living a life. He was living proof that sometimes the best gifts come from the courage to open a door you thought was closed forever. A family made whole, born not from perfection, but from the grace of a second chance. In the touching narrative of Ethan Walker, a hard-working single dad whose construction-calloused hands and quiet resilience define his world, and Lauren Bennett, his long-lost first love, now a hidden CEO turned devoted teacher, we glean a profound life lesson. Second chances aren't mere coincidences, but invitations to heal old wounds and embrace growth when vulnerability meets courage. Ethan, scarred by abandonment and financial struggles, rediscovers Lauren at a parent-teacher night, her poised demeanor masking a fortune amassed in tech, yet forsaken for the fulfillment of shaping young minds like his daughter Mia's. Their reunion stirs buried emotions, regrets of youthful silence, the sting of class divides, and the fear of unworthiness, yet blossoms into honest connection through shared vulnerabilities. Ethan's pride in providing alone, Lauren's isolation amid wealth. As they navigate revelations of her hidden success and his guarded heart, culminating in a heartfelt proposal amid Mia's innocent wisdom, this story evokes deep emotion, reminding us that love isn't about perfect timing or matching statuses, but choosing each other despite scars, transforming pain into partnership and loneliness into family. It tugs at the heartstrings, inspiring tears for lost loves and renewed hopes, urging us to release past hurts and open doors we thought sealed forever. For in forgiveness and authenticity lies the true richness of life. If this tale resonated with you, stirring memories of your own rekindled flames or unexpected reunions that reshaped your path, share your stories in the comments below. What second chance taught you the power of vulnerability? And don't forget to subscribe for more soul-stirring accounts of love, redemption, and human triumph. Your engagement keeps this community blooming, one inspiring chapter at a time.